joined this morning by Jacob and Jared from Obesity Pharmacy at Health Monday. You know, Jared, I could have sworn that was Jake doing that two-step dancing there.
I taught him.
I don't know about Beverly, but he is a hillbilly.
Yeah.
Good morning to you both. Hopefully it was a wonderful Mother's Day weekend for y'all and your families.
Yes, very nice. I mean, it's raining today, but otherwise it was fantastic.
That's right. And we're going to talk about something today that kind of rains on our head a lot of times, and that's obesity.
What a segue.
You know, I guess the first question might be, why are we talking about this right now?
That's a good question. Because nobody wants to, right? This is one of those times like when you're sitting in church and the preacher gets up and you can tell the second he starts he's going to be stepping all over your toes that day and you just start out uncomfortable. Yeah. Right, okay. It's similar to that. So we're talking about obesity today. You know why we're talking about it? Because it is not something about how you look. It's not cosmetics. It's not we care because we want to look good. It's because it's a major, major, major health issue, and I'll tell you how major. In the United States, 73% of everybody walking around out there, that's 3 out of 4, is at least overweight, if not obese. 40-some-odd% are actually more obese than just simply overweight.
Oh, wow.
We have 42% plus of every single person walking around out there is classified medically as obese. And we'll talk later about why that's a big deal. But what I want to stress in this first one is we're not talking about it because we care how you look. We're talking about it because we care about your health. And it is a huge primary health concern. And 3 out of 4 people in the United States statistically need to do something about it.
Wow. So how's obesity defined?
Well, I want to make sure we understand. You guys have all heard of I guess we'll call it a height to weight ratio called the BMI. There's a chart you can look up online, or you can get a body mass, stands for body mass index. You can get a body mass index calculator online. You enter your height, you enter your weight, they'll come back and tell you what your BMI is. Over the years, basically what's been found through lots of scientific research is when a person has a BMI that's greater than 25, they're classified as overweight. When a person has a BMI greater than 30, they're classified as obese. And the reason they came up with those classifications is once you get to this particular number, you're a candidate to have these health problems. Once you get to this higher number, you're a candidate to have these health problems at a more at a higher rate, right? And so that's kind of the issue. Now, we define obesity by BMI, but BMI is not the definitive answer for everything. You can be a big muscular athlete, right? Have a really high BMI, except you don't have any problem because you have more muscle than fat. So in that situation, BMI is not perfect. So we use a couple other things to look at as we're thinking about obesity. One is called waist circumference. If you ever had a health screening, somebody has taken a tape measure and calculated your waist circumference. The reason they do that is because the higher number for your waist circumference, the more abdominal or visceral fat you have, the more likely you are to have certain kinds of heart diseases and those kind of issues. The other thing is body fat percentage. So when we take BMI, waist circumference, and body fat percentage, we got a pretty good idea about where we stand.
I'm sure overeating is one reason for obesity, but there are other causes as well, Jake.
Yeah, obesity, it appears if you first glance to be a simple something to define and do it, but it's a very complex disease. So there's a lot of causes, but you take all these causes, you can generally narrow them down, in most cases, to two things. One of them is mom and daddy, genetics. What you got in your genes greatly affects what kind of weight you carry and how you carry your weight, healthy versus unhealthy. And then the second one, obviously, is what we're going to call lifestyle choices. And those are the things that's when you start squirming. Nobody wants to hear about them. But it's a fact. We wish we could blame it all on mom and dad. But honestly, lifestyle choices are a huge factor here. It is an unhealthy diet. We rely way too much on fast foods, quick foods, frozen foods, fatty foods, right? We get way too many of our calories from drinks that don't fill us up or provide any useful thing to us other than a lot of calories. And we don't do enough. We don't move enough. We don't exercise enough. We often have jobs that are more passive than active. We have hobbies that are more passive than active. We spend our time on the sofa at home and in the desk chair at work. and we don't do enough. And so between those two things, your genetics and your lifestyle choices and what you eat, what you drink, and what you do, that's where obesity comes from. If you oversimplify it, it's simply when you consistently take in more calories, then you're burning off. And those are the things that lead to it.
Jared, why do we blame it on mom and dad?
Well, blame, that's a good question. I mean, the things that you come by, that you inherit, I don't know if blame is the right word. You know, we have a long history of high cholesterol in our family. Jake and I both have high cholesterol. It's been generation after generation after generation. So I don't know if blame is the right word. You know what I mean? So it is something that we inherit, and yet they couldn't help it themselves to begin with, you know.
So what are some of the complications?
Well, I'll start with this. These are things that you guys all know, but let's start with heart-related problems, right? When we're overweight or obese, we have higher blood pressure, we have higher cholesterol levels, and so we're talking about issues that may lead to a heart attack or a stroke later on in life as we overwork our hearts, right? A second thing would be diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes. When we're overweight, it affects the way that our body uses insulin. It doesn't use it correctly, and so a lot of times overweight people will develop type 2 diabetes. You got problems that you think about like arthritis, specifically osteoarthritis. The more weight you're carrying on your joints, the more likely they are to wear out. That's pretty simple, and we can all understand that. The more overweight you are, the more difficult it is for you to fight off infections. You guys all know this, but we've talked about this for decades. A person who's overweight has a much more difficult time fighting off some kind of flu or pneumonia, other type of respiratory infection, and so that makes it very difficult. There's all kinds of other problems. I won't necessarily give you the entire list, but sleep apnea, which is very damaging. There's kind of cyclical relation between heart disease and sleep apnea and being overweight. All those things are kind of combined together. And then the last one I'll say is, a lot of times when people are overweight, they have liver problems. And of course, our liver is vital to the way our body functions. I would say that the number of people with liver problems increases dramatically in those that are overweight.
Jacob, this is not in my notes this morning. Is it more male, female, or how does that work out?
That's a good question, and honestly, about the same. I mean, there are some slight percentage differences in the numbers, but it's highly prevalent. Again, we're looking at 3 out of 4 Americans. It's not 100% of the men and only 50% of the women, or vice versa. It's 3 out of 4 pretty much across the board.
So how do we prevent it? Sounds simple, but how do we prevent it?
Boy, it sounds simple, doesn't it? It's so much easier to sit here and talk about. You prevent it by addressing the factors that caused it, and that is simply we need to move more, we need to eat less. Now, let's get a little more in-depth than that. Let's talk about moving more. We need to exercise. Well, what do you mean we need to exercise? What? Honestly, it's 150 minutes a week. You need to exercise 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, on average. Now, that's not easy to do. I don't do it. I'll call it. I don't do that number, but we need to. And that's how we can stave this off. That's how we can both prevent, but this is also the most important way to treat as well. I'd much rather see somebody treating their obesity with these things I'm about to say than with something else. So we treat it with exercise. But hey, wait a minute, but I've got this injury, that injury, all this wear and tear from years of obesity. I physically can't do 150 minutes a week. You hear that a lot, and it's true. Okay, let's just start somewhere. Let's start a movement. There are chair exercises you can do. If you can walk, let's walk. I don't care if it's slow. If you can move, let's get some steps up. Move. Let's start by moving. And then the other half we start on is what we take in. Let's pay attention to what's going in. Let's cut out the high-calorie drinks. That's not easy to do. I love my tea. I love my sweet tea. I love it. Don't take it from me. But that we need to, right? We need to cut out on foods that provide a whole lot of fat and calories for a whole little amount, filling and nutrition. You know, that's most of your sweets. Let's face it, a little amount of sweets is a whole lot of calories, a whole lot of fat, not a whole lot of good, and not very filling. And so let's eat more foods that are more filling for lower calories and fat. Fruits, vegetables, lean meats, lean proteins, those things, right? That's what we need to be eating more of. None of this is fun, none of this is easy. We don't need to be deep fat frying everything. I know that hurts too, I don't like that either. But we've got to do what we can. because there's always limitations. Hey, I can't do that much exercise. My physical health won't let me. Hey, I can't come home and cook this type of healthy meal every day because of my work schedule or my babysitting schedule or my child schedule or whatever. Look, there's always excuses. I get it. There's always excuses, but we've got to do what we can when we can to take down this problem, because I don't think it's too far to step out there to say that obesity is the biggest health problem in the United States, and I don't think it's close.
Wow.
And so we've got to do what we can do when we can do it. Do something, do anything, and start now.
You know, again, this is kind of getting off the beaten path a little bit, but you know, you don't, if you go to lunch and you're working and you don't go through the drive-thru and say, I want a salad, I want a hamburger and french fries and you know, double the meat. You know, we're in a fast-paced world, and that leads to obesity too.
The busier that we are, the more likely we are. Well, first of all, we're under a lot of stress. That's not helpful. We talked on this show before. It's not like you can just flip the switch and decrease your stress, right? But the busier you are, the more likely we are, quite frankly, to eat unhealthy. One of the things that we can do is to plan ahead of time. This is more difficult. It takes time. Personally, I have a wife to do this for me, right? Not everybody has a wife to plan how you can eat healthier for you, right? And cook things for you. But preparing ahead of time to take your lunch to work instead of getting out and going to get fast food, that's a fantastic way for persons who are working, who are in a hurry, to get that done.
So do you do that?
I do. I take my lunch almost every day.
Wow.
I mean, I like to eat out. Quite frankly, on the weekends, I didn't do very well. I will have a confession, though. I started a can of Dr. Pepper on Saturday night,
Okay.
and I didn't even finish it.
Wow.
That's a start.
I
We're
mean,
getting somewhere.
that's a start right
We're
there.
getting somewhere.
That's a start.
Yeah,
somewhere.
5-star right there.
I did have a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch last night, which was a bad idea.
So what
good.
about treatments for obesity?
Well, I'm just going to break them up into 3 categories. This is not really exhaustive, but well, let me back up. I want to echo something Jake said. The number one best treatment is changing the way that we operate in an effort to lose even 5 to 10% of body weight. So don't panic. If you're 300 pounds, you don't need to be saying, I've got to get down to 150 in the next 6 months. No. Look at 15 pounds first. You get 15 pounds off, then we'll go from there, right? Don't panic. You know, sometimes no matter what we're doing, not just health related, we make goals that we can't possibly get to. Don't do that. Make a goal that you can get to. Trust me, you get to that goal, you're gonna feel great. And guess what you're gonna wanna do? You're gonna wanna get right to the next goal, right? So let's talk about treatment options besides what we can do with our lifestyle. Obviously, you guys know there are lots of medicines out there that are being used for weight loss. One category I'll say are just the appetite suppressants, right? You got your medicines like Adipex. There are other medicines that are meant for other purposes that are really being used for weight loss, kind of like your Adderall, some of your ADHD type medicines. Those medicines work, but they got some, risk and side effects that, I don't necessarily want to undergo if we don't have to. Another category of medicine that we don't really use that much anymore that used to be popular would be medicines that kind of decrease fat absorption. You may remember a medicine called Xenical. That was a prescription over-the-counter medicine called Ally. Can't even remember how to spell it at this point.
A-L-L-I.
A-L-L-I. I honestly hadn't seen that one recently. We don't use that much. And one of the reasons that we don't see those medicines very much anymore is the rise of these medicines that have kind of dominated all of our conversations in the last couple of years. And that is these medicines that were originally created to treat diabetes that cause people to lose sometimes a significant amount of weight. And these are your medicines, like I know you've heard of them, but I'll just name them: Ozempic or Mounjaro or Trulicity or Wegovy. These medicines have quite frankly dominated almost every phone call we've had at the pharmacy in the last couple of years. These medicines can sometimes take a lot of weight off of a person. And we have people that really shouldn't be even on these medicines that are trying to get these medications. And so we don't have time for a comprehensive discussion of these medicines on this show. This is going to be between you and your doctor and your pharmacist, making a good choice for you. These medications, none of these types of medications are right for everybody. So there are medications out there, but I do want to make this point very clear. You do not want to undertake any prescription medication for weight loss unless you're trying to make your lifestyle choices first, lifestyle changes first. You start with that. If medication can help, we'll work that out between pharmacists and doctors.
All right. Guys, thank you for coming this morning. Obesity, that is a topic of conversation this morning. And as you said, Jake, 3 out of 4, we got a lot of work to do, don't we?
We really do.
All right.